Before we kick off this episode of Headstrong, I want to talk to you about my series sponsor, Green Chef. Now, if you're anything like me, you are always on the go and rarely have time to even think about eating healthy, let alone going to the shop, picking out the right ingredients, and then getting home and devoting loads of time to cooking these meals. Luckily, Green Chef are one step ahead. They deliver your ingredients and step-by-step recipe cards directly to your door, making it the easiest and most convenient way to keep healthy eating habits on track. Green Chef offers a wide variety of delicious recipes each week, with options including keto, vegan, flexitarian, lower carb, and vegetarian diets. Even better, all of these recipes contain one or more of your 5 a day. What an absolute bonus. Green Chef recipes are developed and approved by qualified nutritionists, so you can relax knowing that your meals align with your dietary needs and lifestyle. So, get 40% off your first box and 20% off your next 3 boxes with the code HEADSTRONG. That's Headstrong for 40% off your first box and 20% off your next 3 boxes with Green Chef. Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Headstrong podcast. My name is Louis Strong and I talk to a number of individuals in the public eye to talk to them about their lives and their careers, but notably I want to learn what the word headstrong means to them and how their life has been shaped through various experiences. Joining me on this bonus episode is professional cyclist Luke Rowe. Cycling is an incredibly tough sport that requires extreme mental resilience. Luke is one tough cookie and he knows exactly what he's talking about, having been road captain for the Ineos Grenadiers for the last few years. I really enjoyed chatting to Luke, and it was really interesting to learn about the daily life of a cyclist, the intense training that they have to do, and then being on the road so vigorously and away from their family. So I really hope you enjoy this episode with cyclist Luke Rowe. Luke, thank you very much for joining me on Headstrong. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you very much. If I'm honest, I'm a bit of a broken man. We did 7 hours on the bike today. Last day training camp in Mallorca, so I'm a bit broken.
7 hours, my word.
Yeah, it was grim.
On December the 20th. Oh no.
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. Well, that is the way of professional cycling, I suppose.
That's it.
So will you be coming home for Christmas now then?
Yeah, I fly home tomorrow. So I've got a wife and 2 excited boys back home. So head back tomorrow and
I bet they can't wait.
Yeah. Well, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So the 1-year-old has no clue, but the 3-year-old is buzzing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, This podcast is kind of rooted in mental health and well-being, but what I want to kind of talk about first is the start of your career in cycling. You know, we don't all dive in with crazy 7-hour boot camps, I'm sure. When did it all start? What's your earliest memory of cycling?
Well, it started at a very young age. Both my parents, they met through cycling. My grandparents both cycled. So it's a sport that's been ingrained within the family. So my earliest memory is probably me and my brother got our first proper racing bikes, and that was for Christmas, actually. Purple Peugeots. I'm not sure why they went for purple, but they were purple anyway. I guess at the time I might have been 8, and it's just been a part of my life ever since.
I mean, as you say there, your family are well rooted in the sport. Was there that hyper competitive edge then with cycling, but also just any other activity with your brother?
Do you know what? It was the polar opposite. it was never, it was just a bit of a pastime and a way to keep fit and a way, for those who are into cycling, realize there's a massive social side to the sport. A lot of, stuff outside of the sport, meeting up. So as a kid, it was just a way of, like a youth club almost. There was never, from my parents, we used to race as kids. There was never any pressure. It was more a case of, you get in the minibus with, 15 other kids. You go up, you have a laugh on the way up, and you have a laugh on the way back. And what happens at the race is kind of irrelevant. It was always super relaxed. And with my brother, he was 2 years older, and there was no competition. Actually, we raced, between us, we raced together sometimes, and if he won or I won, it was irrelevant. We had that team mentality from a young age. As long as one of us won, to try to win, it didn't matter. So yeah, polar opposite, really.
I mean, it's a world that I'm not very familiar with, like the youth side of cycling. Is it very obvious from a young age who is likely to make it professionally? Or is it actually, because sometimes you can have late developers, like in a lot of other sports, like rugby, people develop at different ages. But is it clear from a cycling perspective?
I think the first thing I'd add to that is, like any professional sport, is such a small percentage make it to that level. So it was never something that I set out as a young age thinking, right, I want to be a professional cyclist. It was a dream. Of course I thought about it, but realistically I thought, there wasn't many British professionals at that time. There was probably 2-3 in the world tour, the top tier of professional cycling. So, 2-3 from the whole nation. It just seemed like such a far-fetched dream. But I mean, going back to, the question, I think until you're 15, 16, anything you do before that is irrelevant. Like, you're just a kid. And like you say, with developing, some kids are 15 and they got the body of a 12-year-old. Some kids are 15, they got the body of a 20-year-old. So I think, at that age, it's irrelevant. But certainly 15, 16, you see guys and they really stand out. But nowadays you have to be really, really, really standing out to make that jump and be a professional cyclist.
Has kind of technology allowed people to become on an even more level playing field, or is that not the case?
No, I'd say, technology for me has kind of hampered the sport. It used to be, working class man sport, grassroots, out for the club run on the weekend. A lot more of a social scene to what it is now. I think now, with technology brings, devices that can record everything you're doing, power meters, heart rate monitors, all these devices and gizmos. With that, everyone can compare to each other, where back in the day, it just used to be, whoever won the race to the calf was the best on the club run, So I say it's made people be able to judge themselves, and with that becomes more pressure, I think. So-and-so professional can do this power, I can do this power, how far off am I? So it's kind of taken a step back in terms of the social scene around the sport, I feel. But like any sport, technology will advance the sport, and it's made the sport more professional and faster.
It was almost like it was a slightly romantic aspect of it pre kind of heart rate monitors and counting your watts and all that kind of jazz. Because I was speaking to David Miller about it this morning as well. Actually, it's that's the word that he used a lot about cycling pre any technology. It's romantic. How do you feel about that?
I agree 100%. It used to be, when I first started cycling, there was on my handlebars there was nothing. There wasn't even a computer to track your distance. If you went out at 10 o'clock and you come back at 4 o'clock, you say, I've done 6 hours, where now it's to the minute, to the second, everything is recorded. And you say, during the ride, I averaged this speed, this power, this heart rate. And I think a bit of the romance is gone because of, it's almost become a bit of a maths game. And everything is, you're easily held accountable for everything you do because it's there on a database, on a spreadsheet, on graphs. Everything is, is there for people to see, for coaches to see, and you judged a lot more. Where before it was, I'd say a bit more relaxed and a bit more old school, obviously.
Yeah, sure. Now, before we carry on talking about professional sport, I wanted to know where education stood for you when you were growing up, because you had this dream, as you said, of becoming a professional sportsman. Where did the education fit in? Was that still something important to you and indeed your family, or was it actually more of a byproduct and the cycling was first?
So I turned full-time a full-time rider at 18. Prior to that, my parents said, and that's when I moved to Manchester on the Great Britain under-23 squad. And obviously, if you're on that squad, you're full-time, you're funded, and you devote your life to cycling. Prior to that, my parents said, no way you're going full-time. You've got to do something. So I had a crack at my A levels, did my AS levels, and sacked them off. And then I said, right, I want to go full-time. And they said, no, one more year, you have to do something. So I did a college degree a college course to be a personal trainer, a PT. And actually, it was the best thing they could have done, because, to be full-time off your own back without making a penny and kind of relying on my parents, it's bullshit. It's not right. And I think I've got the same approach as a parent. You got to, at least be able to support yourself at that age. So, and actually so I did that course throughout that year. So that would have been 2008. And actually it come to the end of the course and I had the date for the final exam, which, I was going to pass easy. It was a bit of a joker's course, to be honest. It was quite a basic course. And I got the date for the course, and it clashed with a race in Germany, a 3 or 4 day stage race, riding for GB. So I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do here? So I said to my parents, I come back from college. I said, listen, the college have agreed that I can take the test a week later. So I'm going to Germany and I can do the test. They said, all right, no worries, you can go to Germany. So I went to Germany, actually won the race. I come back home and then I had to break the news to my parents that I'd lied and I just missed the final exam. So I never actually got my qualification for that. But it all ended up right in the end. But looking back, that was, a stupid mistake to have done the whole year studying and not get anything for it, not got the qualification. So yeah, I didn't get anything from it, but I won a bike race. So happy days.
All's well that ends well, hey?
Yeah, but stupid looking back,
No, of course I get that.
Any young guy in any sport, I'd say, at least have something in your pocket as a backup. So for me, it could have been, right, I've got my AS levels, I've got a PT, what's it called, qualification. If it all goes tits up with your sport, you've got something to fall back on, which I didn't. Luckily, it ended up, making a career out of it, but I had nothing to fall back on. And that's something I'd say to any young guy is have a plan B from a young age.
That's something that I will talk about actually as well for the end of a cyclist's career. That's something that I definitely want to talk about as we get to the end of the podcast. But let's go to the very start of your professional life then as a cyclist. So let's first of all go with going to Manchester. You're 18. The excitement is there. It's a reality. Where are you mentally? As in, are you ready and willing to say, right, this is my life devoted to cycling and nothing else other than that?
To be honest, when I look back, I wasn't 100% devoted to cycling. We moved to Manchester. We moved to a place called Fallowfield, which was full of students. I was 18. And I don't feel I missed out on the uni experience, really. We were there for the winter and we were based in Italy in the summer. So for the winter, probably at the time I thought I was ticking all the boxes and doing everything right, but I was a million miles off. I was, going out quite a lot. And, you live with 6'8", 18-year-olds. You're surrounded in nightclubs and pubs and whatever. So probably in my mind, I thought I was, but actually I wasn't. I was far from a true professional. And then as when we went out to Italy, it was a lot more we were in a place called Quarata in Tuscany. We spent the summer there, and then there wasn't many distractions, so I really did knuckle down. And at that point, after I won a few races the first year, I thought, right, that's kind of the point where I thought, actually, this is a possibility. I've moved to Europe. Well, sorry, I moved to, obviously UK's Europe, but I moved to the heartland Europe where cycling was massive, ingrained in the culture, and I was succeeding. And that's the first time I really thought, do you know what, I could potentially make this. And I did get my head down then.
You knuckled down. So I spoke to David this morning, and naturally he was involved in an era of cycling that seems somewhat tarnished now. But that would have been when, it was slightly before me growing up, but certainly would have been when you were growing up. As a fan of cycling when you were younger, what did it mean seeing all that develop? And that's a world that you wanted to get into. How did you feel about all that?
It was tough. It was strange, and especially to admire one individual. And he was your hero. You'd have a poster of him on your wall. You'd buy his cycling kit. You'd ride around and you'd call yourself that rider. And then he would be caught and went positive for drugs. As a kid, that's demoralizing. And I found it quite strange, really, to admire someone and then realize, well, actually, everything they ever achieved is bullshit. But I think you just, back then, unfortunately, and it's a terrible approach to take, is you just kind of accepted it. You learned to accept that it was ingrained in the sport, and you got to a point where you thought, you stopped being naive and you started to be skeptical, which is bad, because you watch a race, someone crosses the line, and the instant thing that goes to your mind is, yeah, but is he cheating? Any great achievement, any great win, any great performance, you begun to doubt everything, which is sad. And I think, I'm lucky that I come into the sport. The blood passport was introduced in 2010, and since that, it's become, as far as I can see, very, very tough to beat the system. So luckily, I came in, turned professional a couple of years after that. So now, and I've been part of 5 Tour de France victories where I've trained with the guy who won the Tour, and seen him in Tenerife and an altitude camp, and seen them devote their lives. So I've got 100%, belief that the sport is now in a great place. But back in the day, it was tough, and it just left you very skeptical of any great performance.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, it would be just demoralizing, as you say, to actually have your hero at the time achieving all this greatness, and then actually it be founded on nothing ultimately, which is a great disappointment. But alas, as you say, the sport is moving in a great direction. When we go look at, let's look at a Grand Tour then, because this is something that I feel is not well documented necessarily in the media, and this is something that I'm really interested in, and I know that people listening would be interested in it. What's a typical day for you at a Grand Tour? And I know that maybe that's evolved over the years, over the last 10 years or so, with the technology and different courses and routes and whatever does change things. But what's a typical day for you, and how long is it? Talk me through a routine.
I think the first thing you could say is a typical day is long. People see you race a stage, and that stage could be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, really. An average of 180, 200K. And people see that on TV and they don't see anything else. And before that, so you wake up, breakfast, we got a kitchen truck, so the one half is for the chefs to actually make the food, and the other half is, sit down restaurant type thing. So we have breakfast on there. And then from there, you're straight on the bus. And most time you got transferred to the start. So you're on the bus, and you can have anywhere from an hour to 3 hours really on the bus to start the stage. You have a meeting on the bus, you sign on, you come back to the bus for half an hour or so, and then you start the stage. Then stage 4 to 6 hours. You come back. The first thing is the priority is obviously food, filling the tank up for the next day and recovering from the day you've had. And then again, you've got a transfer, which can be anywhere from the same. And, it could be 30 minutes. It could be 1, 2 or 3 hours. So, potentially for a day, there's days where you spend longer on the bus than you do on the bike, which, eats into recovery time, and you're not in your bed. So you have that bus transfer, you're back at the hotel. And then all you have between that time and when you go to sleep, you have an hour massage and dinner. But that sometimes, the Tour de France, I can be, have a massage at 9:30, finish at 10:30, and you've been out of your hotel. And that's the first time you walk into your room, 10:30 at night. And you leave your hotel, it can be 8 o'clock in the morning. So from 8 till 10:30 on a bad day, if the transfers are long, you're out, you're on the move, you're traveling, you're racing. So it's long days. It's really long days.
I mean, that's mentally exhausting. And to accumulate that all into a cycling season, it's something that I want to talk about because you're on the road for an incredibly long time. And as you mentioned at the beginning, you've got your young family who, of course, you want to be spending time with, but your career involves you being on the road for a long period of time. So how do you cope and tackle with loneliness? Because I know, of course, you're allowed to see them and I know that you can FaceTime them, but how do you cope with that?
I think that's one thing I've learned over the years is that this sport is, I think it's more a mental battle than a physical almost, which sounds crazy. I think physically everyone can get to a good level, and there's a lot of guys on a similar trajectory, similar physical talent. But then, a Grand Tour, I think after a week, 10 days, everyone's broken, everyone's shattered, everyone's carrying a high volume of fatigue. And then it just becomes purely mental. It's who can hurt themselves the most, who can continue day after day to push that pain to the maximum. And I think, the last 10 days, certainly the last week of a Grand Tour is really purely a mental battle. And the second you doubt yourself, the second you think about not finishing a stage, the second you think about going home, you're already at home. It's game over. With the loneliness side, I think we're lucky in our team that we've got a great bunch of boys. I've known some of my teammates for 20 years and we've grown up with them. So I think I'm lucky in that side. A lot of the staff and riders, we've got that British culture within our team. But of course, there's times where I miss a lot of things with my kids growing up. You might miss the first word, the first step, these milestones in life that are massive and you'll never get again, and you'll miss them. And I think for me, that's, if you look at the sport, the whole package, everything, that's the hardest thing for me is knowing I'm missing things I'll never get back. And you got FaceTime, of course, but there's nothing like giving your son a hug or, giving your wife a hug. There's nothing like that. So FaceTime is a great tool, but it can't replicate the real thing. So for me, that's the hardest thing, is time away from the family. And the training's hard, the racing's hard, mental, physical battle. But for me, it's that distant from the family. And actually, I think it was 2015. I had a roommate, Ian Stannard, and we did pretty much an identical race schedule for the whole year. And he was always my roommate. And we worked out that I'd been in a room, sharing a room with him. I've spent more nights with him than I have with my wife, which is mental. I was with him more than my own wife. So that's how much time you're on the road.
Lucky Ian. So you talk about mentality there as well. And naturally, I need to ask you, what do you do personally that maintains your mentality? And how do you train your mind over the years? How's it adapted, this mental training?
I think the first few years, you're just in this bubble of excitement and you're in an adventure, and you go to any race, you're just happy to be there. You're surrounded in you made that step up to one of the best teams in the world, or the best team in the world at cycling. You're just in this, whirlwind. And then as the years go on, you realize, you start to doubt things, and I'm missing out on a lot. But I keep rationalizing it in, I'm 31 years of age. Say I retire in a couple more years, or 2 more years, or 4 more years. I'll be 35 and retired. And I just keep reminding myself of that. And I think, the normal working man or woman goes to 55, 60, and I can beat that by 20, 25 years. So I just keep rationalizing it in, I'm missing out on a lot now, but when the time comes when I stop, I'm going to reap them rewards, and I'm going to be able to, my kids will be, 5 and 3 or 6 and 4, whatever. And I'll have so much more time with them then, that in the long term, I win. I win that battle of time with my family and kids. And I just keep telling myself that, and that's how I rationalize it.
So your thoughts are actually more about the future, actually, as opposed to being in the there and the now, and not quitting, and not the sport itself, I guess.
Yeah, I think, the here and now is, I think I've got to add that if the most important thing with the sport is you have to love it. And I think it's got to be your passion. It's got to excite you. You got to be goal driven. And the second you start to resent them things, or you don't enjoy training, or you don't enjoy racing, there is no chance you can do it. No chance. It's not possible. The sport is too hard, too intense, too much time on the road. The second you don't enjoy it, stop. And the second I didn't enjoy it, I'd stop the next day, because I'm quite a realistic guy. I know what I can and can't do at the sport. I know I'm not going to be a superstar. I know I'm not going to make millions. I've never been money or financially driven. It's just been about passion and achieving things. So the second I didn't enjoy it, I'd stop the next day. So I think that's massive. And you see guys, 24, 28, 30, they're on top of the world. They've got massive contracts, and they say, I'm done. And from the outside, you say, what are you doing? You're in a great team. You're winning races. You're making coin, and you stop. But this sport is too hard to do unless you love it. And when I'm inside that and I see a guy make a decision to stop, I go, completely get it, mate.
You know where they are mentally, I guess.
100%.
So speaking of the mental side of it still, then let's talk about preparation for individual races. Naturally, the one I want to talk about is Tour de France.
Yeah.
You've got 7 under your belt now. You know what you're talking about. But how does one prepare for something like that? Obviously, your team, your body is prepared, and like the program you're on now, on the 20th of December, for example, your body knows how to train it. But how do you prepare yourself up there for a 3-week challenge like that? Is there anything you do in particular?
To be honest, no. I think it's a tried and tested formula that I've kind of nailed now. But there's 2 sides of it. There's obviously the mental and physical side of it. And the physical side of it, that's down to you. You've got to put in the work. You've got to go in the camps. You've got to do the races prior. And, last year, for example, I was on the start line and I knew I wasn't physically 100%. And that's a shit feeling. And that was a few different reasons, but I won't go into it. So physically, you just got to do the work. And when you're on the start line and you're 100% ready, there's no stone unturned, you roll up the sleeves, I'm ready to go. You've already got a tick in the box, massive tick in the box. And then mentally, I think it's just having that will to get to Paris. And, as soon as you doubt it, or like I've said before, any shadow of a doubt that creeps into your mind and you let that fester, you're fucked. So I think you gotta blank that out and just, I don't know, it's very cliche, but I always think, the pain, the suffering, the hours, the long days, it is only 21 days, which sounds a lot, but it's only 21 days. And as soon as you get to Paris, when you roll onto that Champs-Élysées, you see the Arc de Triomphe. There's no feeling like it. That feeling of, accomplishment. And, I think in the hard times, I just think of the end result and think, I don't want to. And it's happened to me. I've ridden 7. Last year, I didn't finish the Tour de France, and I got disqualified once on stage 17. So of the 7, I've made it to Paris 5 times. And I just keep reminding myself of the end goal and how the 2 years I didn't make it, how shit it feels to watch your teammates and the rest of your competitors roll onto the Champs-Elysees when you're sat at home. You're down in the dumps. It's horrible. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been down the Champs-Elysees alongside the yellow jersey on top of the world. And I've been at home in the slums feeling sorry for myself, seeing other people doing it. And I think I just keep reminding myself of, which side of the coin do you want to be on?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Now let's look at a specific day of the year, which is upcoming, Christmas Day. Is that a day off for you, or are you? Because you always hear stories of this. What are you doing?
I am not riding my bike, 100%.
Nice.
Complete day off. I do a big block now. I've been out here for 15, 16 days. So it's been tough out here, and I'll be back on another training camp in January. So I've kind of got a 10-day window there where in between the 2 camps, of which I'll ride most days, but certainly not Christmas Day. I think that day is, for me, I'm a massive Christmas man. So that day is devoted to my family. And I think a lot of people who, will ride on Christmas Day and post. And that meant, I hear people say, I train on Christmas Day because I know my competitors aren't.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah.
Absolute bollocks, because, we usually tend to train in like 3-day blocks, 3 days recovery day, 3 days recovery day. So if they're training on Christmas Day, they're probably going to take the 26th off or the 24th off. And you just think, mate, it's just social media, isn't it? It's
yeah.
People want to sound like Rocky, but certainly for me, it'll be a day off.
No, that sounds about right. Now, what I need to talk to you about is leadership, because this is a role that you found yourself in, and rightly so. What are the kind of the main responsibilities that you feel you have for your team? Because obviously you work with the management, and obviously you talk to everybody, but what are your core kind of values as the leader in the team?
I think honesty is the one thing that I would put above anything else. It's an intense environment. There's a lot to be achieved. People are going for the win in the Tour de France. People's livelihoods are at stake. And I think honesty is the one thing that rises above everything else, between riders, with staff. And I can be quite blunt, say it as it is. Any issue, I like to hit it head on, which sometimes maybe isn't the best way, but most of the time I think it is. But for me, this whole road captain thing that gets associated with me, I think it's something that it's a glorified term. It's not something that, in football or rugby, if you're the captain, it's a badge of honor. It's someone that people look up to. And in cycling, it's just a term used for basically a guy who's going to communicate, a guy who can communicate among, me and 7 others are going to, say we're on the start line of the Tour de France. And then you got, this big network of staff, directors in the car, the principal, Dave Brailsford, whatever. And you got this big fleet of people. And it's just the road captain. Say my job is just to kind of speak to all these people and essentially just get the best out of each and every rider on that given day on the road. And then I guess on top of that, it would be, if the director in the car, we got radio communication with them and they call the shots, and what they say we do. But in the heat of the moment, if something happens, a snap of fingers, a crash, or there's crosswinds, or a team is doing something and we got to react to it straight away, and you haven't got that time to, get on the radio and say, this team's doing that, what should we do? And a snap decision needs to be made. that's where that'll fall on my shoulders. So, there is a bit of responsibility, and I think sometimes making a decision quick, even if it's not quite the 100% correct decision, is the right thing to do. And so there has been times where I've made a decision and it's been wrong. And you get back on the bus, and I think as long as you can accept you're wrong and I can walk on and I say, you know what, boys, that's on me, that was my fuck up. It happens. But as long as you get 99% of the calls right, then it's all good. So it is that added little bit of responsibility, but it's something I've developed over the years.
Now, I know that you have, as we said, you've got friends in the team that you've had for years, and there's a plethora of guys who are looking after you in the management team behind the scenes. But do you feel that responsibility off the bike as well, from a well-being sense? If you saw one of the guys down, or maybe something wasn't quite right, would you feel a responsibility to go say something, just as a friend, or is this coming as a team captain, or what?
I think just as a person, it's just without any title on it. I think it's definitely something I do.
I thought
I'd always, and I think it's important. The whole mental health side of thing has only become really, it's really surfaced and people become a lot more transparent in recent years. Really, it seemed to be a bit of macho ego thing to kind of not say anything in years past, but now I think we're in a better level where people are happier to talk about things. And definitely I've had teammates who are down in the dumps, and I've guys who have suffered from depression, and I think I'd like to think there's whoever it is, but I'd like to think that I'm someone who they could turn to. Luckily, I can say, I've never experienced anything, any form of depression, any form of anxiety or mental health issues. But that doesn't mean I can't be there for others who maybe are struggling. And there has been cases of that in the past. And it's a tough world to be in. It's not all, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's cutthroat. It's tough.
Yeah.
People get left out of races, selections, lack of form. And like I said, at the end of the day, this is a job. There's livelihoods. There's, depending on how good you are, there's very big money to be made, and it's an intense environment to be in. So, them things, mental health, and people will struggle at times. It's human. So I'd like to think, without putting any label on it as road captain or any of that, just as one human to another, I'd like to think I can be there for any teammate or anyone going through anything.
So I don't want to suggest that you experienced any form of anxieties yourself, but when you missed out on finishing 2 tours, but you've also suffered from injury that has led you to miss out on some races. What's that feeling like? Not being able to fulfill your kind of, your role, and seeing your pals, but your colleagues out there as well, getting to do the race, and you're not able to do it.
That was a very tough, what was it? Almost a year really. And I broke my leg, and it was, I was led in bed. I said, how many breaks have I got? And he said, we got to 25 and we just stopped counting. It was completely shattered. Everything from the shin down was just shattered. And I was led in the bed, and the doctor who did the operation came in, and he said, Luke, do you want me to be brutally honest with you? I said, mate, just tell me how it is. And he said, there's a good chance you'll never ride a bike again. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I lay there in bed. I haven't said this to many people. I laid there in bed, and once he left, I just burst into tears. I said, fuck, this is serious. But I just, 2 minutes after that, I just said, nah, that's not happening. And I think that's probably the most motivated and devoted to the sport and my rehab I've ever been in my career. I think I crossed the T, dotted the I's. I had a great group of people around me with the rehab. The team were absolutely phenomenal. They, had the best of the best in terms of the physio, the machines, the technology, the surgeons. I had this amazing group of people around me who were 100%. They were all in, and I was all in. And I said, I'm not having that. I'm not accepting that. I'm going to get back to where I am, and I'm going to be better than I was before. And I think I did, and I nailed that. And that was, I think, when you're on when you get sidelined in a place like that, and I tried not to watch many races because it would piss me off. And the worst was when I'd watch a race and I would see my team, and I thought to myself, if I was there, I'd have done that slightly different, or I could have helped there, or I could have contributed, and I could have made a difference, and I should have been there and I wasn't. And that was the hard times. When they were winning, I thought, okay, I didn't miss out on anything there. That's fine. They won. But when I seen things on TV and thought I should be there and I could have helped and I could have made a difference and I'm led here, that was when it was hard. But I tried not to watch too much racing, and I just focused on myself, get myself back. And I can honestly say I was 100% dedicated to doing that.
No, no doubt, no doubt. I don't. What with some people, they'd hate to say the word, but do you regret that? As in, not literally the injury, but how it full came, how it happened. Is that a regret of yours, or were you just actually, do you know what? It's part of life. It's happened, and the fact that you've recovered fully anyway doesn't matter.
Well, I think there's not many people actually know how it happened. So it happened on a stag do, and as soon as you say it happened on a stag do, there's an instant. People instantly paint their own picture of what happened. You know, the instant, if someone said to me, I broke my leg on a stag do, the first thing you're going to think he's pissed off his head, swinging off a chandelier, doing something stupid, which is not the case. I was whitewater rafting, and it was in the morning, jumped into the water, and I jumped into water that was too shallow. And I think it was, if it didn't happen on a stag do, it would just be a whitewater rafting incident. But because it happened on a stag do, you get like branded as, typical stag do lad mentality, pissed up, broke his leg, which wasn't the case. But do I regret jumping into water that was too shallow? Of course you do. My leg exploded, like, of course. But I think in general in life, it's a fine balance, and the sport is so hard and intense. So where you get them short window, like this was directly after the Tour de France. So I had a break, went to the Tour de France. We won the Tour de France, and the next week this happened. So you're at the highest of highs and you're at the lowest of lows, and in a week everything just turned upside down. So do I regret jumping into the water too shallow? Like, fuck, of course, yeah. Like, I wouldn't do that again. But it's life, and life is a roller coaster. It's not all. Nothing's going to go smooth for your whole career, and every day you come across an obstacle. You never go. Every hour you come across something that you do different or you'd like to change, but life's a roller coaster.
So you previously mentioned as well that you're a massive Christmas man, which is obviously awesome. But how do you unwind yourself as a professional cyclist? Because it's a long season. Yes, you every now and then you'll get a rest day, but what do you do to take time off and actually forget about cycling?
I think obviously family time is important. I spoke about that, at length already, really. A rest day, I'll try and not really hang out with cycling mates and just go do something with the family and just be in a whole new environment, as opposed, get out of that cycling bubble. After that, I'm really into my ice hockey. I try and keep up to date with that. My hometown is Cardiff, so I keep up to date with the Cardiff Devils and, watch a lot of their games when I can, follow the NHL, Boston Bruins. So I really, follow that quite vigorously. So that's a way to, switch off and get involved in another sport. And, I think it's important to switch off from cycling. On a rest day, if there's a bike race on, I'm probably not going to watch it because I just want to, even if my team's racing, I just want to kind of switch off from the bike. And actually, when I get back from training, like my wife has no clue about cycling. I met her, she had no clue about cycling. And I love that. I'll walk through the door, say, how's the ride? Yeah, it was good, thanks. And that's the end of cycling. We won't talk about it anymore. So I think it's important just to have that kind of switch where I'm on the bike, I'm focused, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You finish the ride, you get home, and you don't talk or think about cycling. So I think it's just, and I've got that ability to kind of switch it on and switch it off, which is nice.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of really quick cycling questions, then I'll wind it up to an end. Who's the most fearless rider you ever raced with or against?
Against Alberto Contador. He was a pain in the ass to race against, and credit to him for that. He would attack where you wouldn't expect anyone to attack. He wasn't afraid of attacking with 100k to go, where most guys would wait to the final climb. He was a pain in the ass to ride against, but credit to him.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Is there a race, past or present, that you would like to have raced in a team with?
Another team as opposed to mine?
No, well, anyone, as in any individual, past or present, that you would like to have been part of a team with.
Rider. Sorry. An easy one. Tom Boonen. I would love to have raced a classics campaign with him. And that quick step team, that mentality, how successful and good they are in the classics. So to have ridden for, quick step alongside Tom would be a match. Yeah, that would be the dream.
And my final question that I ask every guest that comes on: what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong. Never say die mentality. To the end. Ruthless, relentless. I guess relentless is quite a good word. Always, just never say die. Keep plugging away. Just a hard dude who just keeps plugging away and never say die, never quit.
Spoken like a true professional athlete. Luke, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. And that's it for this episode with Luke Rowe on Headstrong. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I felt that it was very eye-opening and engaging about the cycling world. If you did enjoy it, share it with all your pals, and indeed go subscribe so you do not miss out on any more Headstrong episodes. I will see you next week for another episode of Headstrong.